I have 7 o'clock. Hello and welcome to our special meeting on this September 8th, Tuesday night. Thank you for coming. May I have, I'm going to call this meeting to order and we'll do roll call.
Glenn, Mullen,
Here.
Nagel, Wagner, here,
Okay, and then I get to do the Sandike Spirit Award because this is a Limestone family. My kiddos go to Limestone.
Madam Chair, can I ask a favor? Can we do the pledge of allegiance?
Most definitely.
I'd love to do that.
Yes, please, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody stand, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, the Fitz family. Okay, this would be Grant and Sarah and their kiddos, Landon, Parker, Alexa, Olivia, and Jenna. Okay, you have been awarded the Sandike Spirit Award from Mrs. Biggs at Limestone. And I get this privilege because I know the Fitz. I know that they probably don't know me, but I've heard a lot about them because the teachers always talk about how wonderful you guys are, how wonderful your kids are. They say the Fitz should just keep having children because you guys are fantastic. But they do a lot behind the scenes. I would see them always at Rise and Shine every Friday. Like I said, they're behind the scenes though. They might not always see them doing all the stuff, but they're doing the stuff. Mrs. Biggs wrote, "The Fitz family have been such a blessing to Limestone. They work behind the scenes to support our school. When a teacher has a donors choose request, the Fitz family have been known to make generous contributions. They have continued this support for many years." I'm having breathing through my mask, okay. "Our classrooms now have materials necessary for projects that teachers submit. Many of these donors choose projects would not be completely funded without the generous donations of the Fitz family. Not to mention, Mr. Fitz has attended our 5th grade camp, which means he takes a week of vacation from his job to volunteer and monitor the 5th grade boys. And he does this with a smile on his face. Our staff appreciate the love they have for our school. They are a family that we know we can call on at any time to help. Thank you so much." Please, would you like to say something?
I said it all there, but no, I mean, just like I can use my playground voice on good. But I mean, just like it said though, they're always there for us anytime we need them. The kids are great kids, but just always willing to help do anything. And like you said, they're always at the events and things like that, so it's super nice to just be able to always just see the Fitz family. And then when they go to the Colorado line, it's the Fitz family, so.
There you go.
We're down to only 2 though at Limestone, so it's sad, but we really appreciate y'all very much. Great family.
Absolutely.
Everybody gets there. One, two, three. One more. 1, 2, 3.
We got 2 more 5th grade camps coming up.
I get the privilege, well, this is loud, I get the privilege of offering the Coin of Excellence. Coin of Excellence is something that we give out when we see one of our superstars, we see somebody in the community that really steps up and really does an outstanding job. So I'm going to ask Jay Roeder to come and join me. I'll tell you, Jay is one of our superstars. I don't know his exact title, but I'll tell you what he is. He is the champion of our virtual academy. He is taking this over. taken this over and just done a phenomenal job. There's like 1,066 kids at Sand Springs schools right now that are either in full-time virtual or blended virtual school. This guy's taking care of every one of them. He's kind of like the principal of that group. And when I say superstars, we don't do this thing alone. And I'm going to embarrass his wife because Brandy, I've known her a long time. I want her to come and join us too because I know that Jay does this all by himself, but he's got tremendous support from his family. And Jay would probably say he's not the best teacher in his household. His wife is probably a better teacher than he is. But I tell you what, we got a couple superstars right here. So Jay, I just tell you, this is the point of excellence in Sand Springs. We say think right, challenge minds, and inspire hearts. And he's done that. He steps up, whatever needs to be done in virtual academy, he takes care of it with the support of his lovely wife, who I've known when she was about this tall. So we love your family. You guys do a great job for us. So Superintendent Durkee, would you like to share anything else?
So Jay, you guys tell me the numbers, but I believe last year in our virtual academy, we served right at 300 at any given time during the year because kids can opt in and out over the course of the year. This year we started out because we were offering options and because we're in COVID pandemic scenario, we had an inordinate amount of kids that enrolled really all through the summer, but really hit hard in August. And this man did nothing less than something miraculous, and that is to get them all enrolled, make that happen, set up programs for their kids. So now, Jay, I don't know if you want to add anything, but it was just amazing.
Well, it wasn't all me. I mean, Miss Durkee, Mr. Beard, Miss Schlehuber, Mr. Morris, they all came up and helped us enroll kids. I had Brandy up there working. She was doing the elementary kids. We had the entire staff of the virtual academy. They were all coming in 7 in the morning, staying till 4 or 5 in the evening to try to get it all done. So it definitely wasn't all me. So I had a good team to work with.
Thank you.
Yeah, you gotta be 52. Come on.
Brandy, you just thought you were getting away.
All right. We have item number 4, student empowerment and staff empowerment.
So this is the exit time. If you want to exit, you are more than welcome because we're going to go through just my board report, but you're also welcome to stay for that as well. So we do not have no special meeting, so we didn't have anyone sign up to speak. I actually had a conversation. We'll talk about that in my notes today with Mr. Tavallone, who's in the audience today. He's a Tulsa fireman. We had a great conversation Friday. So we'll be talking about that when we get to the health and safety portion of my report. So we always start with item number 4, as you know, and that's all about our continuous strategic improvement plan regarding students and staff. And so I want to take you through a couple of items that for the summer by Fitz family. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you all.
Did you help me do homework?
Maybe. As I wrote these notes for today's board meeting, our virtual academy stood at about 1,066 students. And so that is our blended students, much like Mr. Mullins mentioned, and also our full-time elementary and secondary. Obviously, it's a big uptick in enrollment this year due to parents choosing that model of learning. Rightly so. I will say our class sizes, for the most part, we have some pockets that are a little bit larger, but for the most part are down this year, which was the intention of offering that choice. The biggest obstacle, honestly, was the time period right before school started, because we had a lot of parents who were up until the last minute undecided about what learning option they wanted. And so we had a pretty big influx of kids at the last minute. And as you know, at our special meeting that we held mid-August, we actually postponed the start of school by a week, which gave us time to get everyone enrolled, get schedules set, and make some of those transitions. So it's been a job, no doubt. Jay has handled it beautifully. We did kind of pitch in and help, no doubt, but really this guy shouldered it. So I'm really proud of Mr. Roeder.
There, as we suspected, since March, we've been out of school for 5 full months. And so I think a big worry across the state of Oklahoma was what kind of learning gaps do our children have. I spent some time in district dialogue, as you know, talking to people online and on our YouTube channel about what the difference would be in our virtual academy come fall versus what we did with distance learning in the spring. And talked through, it's going to be different. In other words, we're going to be introducing new standards, new content with expectations for work completion, all those things. And so what we're offering now in the fall, with, well, it's not really summer, but anyway, the start of school, is much different than what parents would have experienced in the spring. We had an SSEA meeting. As you know, I meet with our group of teachers each month before the board meeting to talk through just, different things that is going on. Specifically for us, we're seeing an influx of elementary kids coming back to in-person learning. As we spoke to our administrators, our elementary administrators last week, it was averaging maybe 5 to 7 students per site that were wanting to come back in. I don't have a huge explanation for that dynamic other than we started school. And people were seeing that we started school, we've been at it now this is the beginning of the 3rd week, and we're still having school. And so I do think that there are families that see a difference, maybe being in person in their minds is maybe more productive for their students. And so we're seeing some of those kids come back. We had a conversation again with our SSEA teachers today, and kind of the ask was, so what's the rule? And I said, we're gonna let them come back. And so that's been kind of it's been a little bit tough because when you vary and you have kids coming back, then there's a segment of we've got enrolled, we have enough desks, we need books and all of those things. But we've developed a system, and honestly, my very, very favorite, well, not favorite, but one of the stories I tell was visiting a 1st grade classroom at the beginning of the school year. And the teacher in that room said, I'm glad they're all back, Mrs. Durkee, because we're learning to write our name, which would have been a skill that typically would have been mastered in kindergarten. And so I hope that people see that teachers are critical in conveying learning to students. And so I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing an influx of elementary kids back. The last one is just being accustomed to shift to distance learning. You all know with the health plan, we're going to go into detail about what we're seeing with quarantines and such in the last 2 weeks when we get to the health portion of my report. But honestly, the whole idea of turning on a dime is a real thing. And I think teachers, particularly at the secondary level, would tell you that. We went through a lot of training. Jay and Tina and Sean were really at it this summer, making sure our teachers were utilizing Google Classroom as a mechanism for lesson planning and assignments. And in an investment in that kind of model, our teachers are able to shift through Google Classroom to make sure that students have their lessons pretty seamlessly when we shift. So we knew that was going to be a problem. It was going to be tricky. People were going to have to, we called it nimble. That seems to be the new buzzword versus flexible, but be nimble in terms of shifting. And so that's what we're doing now, and we're learning to do that pretty quickly. And honestly, it's a huge undertaking and a huge task, and our teachers are doing a great job. So I really appreciate their efforts in that way. So really, student and staff, that culminates the report, unless you guys have questions about any segment of that. Okay. If it's okay with you, Madam President, we'll switch to item number 5, and that's resource innovation. I think that there is not a day that goes by that Greg Morris and I don't think about the state of the budget. So as I stated before, our state aid this year, we're taking about a $1.8 million reduction from last year based on state revenue. There is no secret that the economy's been depressed since the pandemic has started, and it's been a real trick to get that back up where it needs to be. And we're still in this state of affairs where we have to be very cognitive of revenue coming in and, kind of that idea of being a little frugal and understanding what we're facing. And so we're in a good place, but now more than ever, that's something that we definitely have to make sure we're paying attention to. The second part of number 5 has to do with our accreditation. And you know that last spring, because of the school closures that happened so abruptly across the state and really the nation, there were a lot of waivers that districts were allowed, and accreditation was one of them. So you see in that accreditation letter, they didn't issue accreditation status like they typically do. So I did want you to see that messaging from the State Department. The third attachment is really about OASA, and that's our Oklahoma Association for School Administrators. It's a subset of COSA. One of the things that has, in my mind, has happened this year with just the kinds of things we're having to think about that really take our time. And of course, health and guidance and pandemic, all those things are a big deal. But one of the things that we talked about at our last, I sit on that executive committee for OASA, and we were talking about keeping our eye on the ball when it comes to legislative issues and making sure we still actively advocate for this thing we call public schools. You all know that over 90% of the population of students nationwide are taught in a public school setting. And so making sure we don't slip up, and making sure legislators know the kind of work we do. I think it was helpful having the ribbon cutting here, and Matt Cannell showed up and was able to speak a little bit. We got lots of love from Channel 23 for sure. J.D. Nolan was here, our state representative, and then also Alice Michael Freeman, our state senator, was here. And I think for them to see how we operate and how schools run and the kinds of programs we offer all children, it's really helpful. And so that was just a little bit of a reminder to stay a little bit vocal about the plight of public school for sure. Golly, you're sitting in the new STEM Center and Freshman Academy, and I hope you're enjoying the optics. When we met for the ribbon cutting last week, the signage wasn't up. So there's still some punch list items that LD Kearns and team are completing. When you walked in the lobby tonight, you saw Charles Page High School on the wall. That was completed since the ribbon cutting. And then the front of the building now is branded with Charles Page High School above the first layer of windows, I guess. And so those are 2 new additions. There will be an LED sign out front that'll be south of the first drive that will be installed soon. And then of course the east wing will get reclad with a little bit of facelift as well. So still some things to do, but we did manage to get this place open and the kids are loving it. It's just compared to where they were at. I will tell you this, I was in a classroom at the beginning of the year and I'd kind of forgotten that those kids never really experienced Central Ninth Grade Center, and so they have really no idea what they missed. However, the sophomores really do know what they have missed, like the new facility. Anyway, it was a kind of a weird epiphany I had, but they're loving it. And you talk to JJ Smith and Blaine Wise, they will tell you they love the fact that there's just 2 hallways, straight hallways with no nooks and crannies, which is really helpful. But the facelift was definitely a bonus for our kids. Lastly, I will say this, I think I mentioned previously in a meeting that we did have roof damage from the hailstorm that happened late March, early April. We have just now gotten a report from our OSIG adjuster. And I know Mike Bynum is here in the audience. We had a meeting today to talk about exactly the content of what the work we had to do. There was a little unclarity, Mike. I don't know if you want to talk about kind of where we're at with that moving forward.
The state has completed, or the state, OSIG has completed all of their inspections and given us a scope of work as well as an estimate on what they think it's going to cost. We're looking around $1.5 to $2 million. But with our 50,000 single event deductible, this will be covered. But it's going to be a lot of work. Everything from Angus Valley to the ticket booth roof here at the stadium, everything.
And we're taking full advantage of the opportunity to get our roofs repaired, in the context of the hailstorm. I will say the report came back without sites on it, and so one of the difficult parts of it is trying to figure out exactly what roof is where according to the site report. So that's what they're getting ready to meet again, try to figure out with our OSIG folks. So that concludes finance and facilities, unless you guys have questions. Okay, on to community involvement and alignment. Again, ribbon cutting ceremony was amazing. I didn't count. I know Ms. Wagers and Mr. Mullins were present. I'm sorry, Ms. Wagner, I knew that. Were present. I don't know, how many would you say? I would say over 50 people showed up from the community to help us celebrate. I almost forgot to cut the ribbon, by the way. I had to be reminded, but we did the ribbon cutting and then gave tours. And folks were pretty impressed with what we've accomplished. Thank you, Sand Springs community, for voting in such a huge way for the bond. Almost 93%. That's pretty unspoken in the state. So pretty proud of our community. We have taken a break from YouTube district dialogue for a while. We just need to get a school up and running. Our intent is to go ahead and continue those maybe once a month in the school year. They were pretty popular for a while. I know the one for, Tina's probably got the statistics, she's nodding, but I do know the one for the health guidance had, I want to say, over 2,000 views at one point. I haven't looked lately. So in an attempt to make sure we're kind of informing the public, keeping people informed of what we're doing, I thought that was a good way to do that. So that's something that we'll probably continue as a strategy, regardless of the pandemic and the end thereof. So that was good. Any questions about communication? Okay. The last of my reports, number 7, has to do with health and safety. Of course, the big topic of today is COVID protocols. I did attach a couple of documents regarding information from the SDE, and then a health advisory that was issued by the Oklahoma State Department of Health, just so you can see kind of the general feel of the state of Oklahoma. I will say, I would really like you to take time to read the SDE guidance. If you look at that guidance in the quarantine section, it talks about tracing. I want to be really clear that every single administrator in our district went through the Johns Hopkins tracing training. It's about 7 to 8 hours, very tedious. Felt a little guilty about having to do it. However, I think they're glad that they went through that training to understand how that works. We're still, we're in the big middle of it, which sparked a conversation with Matt Cataloni last week. I was thankful, Matt, that you came in and talked to me. I also know Barrett Kramer. He's a fireman that also works for Tulsa Fire, and had a conversation with him a couple of weeks ago. One of the things that we're doing regarding data for Sand Springs, in your folder, you have a sheet with the Friday data from the number of cases and the number of quarantines in the district. If you look online, you'll find that same document posted to our Sand Springs Public Schools website on the pop-up page, and it's the first link that you get to. But I want to talk through it just a little bit because I think it begs some explanation so you can know what our team's going through. Basically, we have a spreadsheet by site that allows our health folks at each of the site document quarantines and cases. Once that's compiled on Friday, and it can be a chore. So by the time the data was updated on Friday afternoon, it was pretty late. So this got posted today. Our goal is to post it on Monday morning, but it's going to take a little bit on Friday afternoon to compile the data. What I think is powerful when you look at the spreadsheet, one of the things that we wanted to show is the percentage of cases, percentage of quarantines. We wanted to show totals. So at the bottom of that sheet, you see in green the percentages, and on the side, it's broken down by site in terms of site cases and then quarantines and isolations. Quarantine is someone that's been exposed, it's quarantined for 14 days, and isolation is someone that actually has tested positive, it's a positive case. I combined those two in the third column of numbers because really you're talking about those folks that are not present. The site population that you see includes students and staff members at each of those places. And then of course the percentages. A couple of highlights. If you look at the positive cases as of Friday last week, we are sitting at 0.07%. So that is 0.07% of our population of Sandites at each site, or at total site actually. That's really low, you guys, and I thought it was important for us to see that. I think it's important for the public to see that. And then in the active quarantine column at the bottom in green, total for the district is 3.58% folks quarantined. So that could be staff or students. We didn't differentiate. We're trying to protect the privacy of individuals. But what that tells me is I'll get this wrong, but 96.2%, 96.42%, are actually here at school being educated. So when you think about the reason we're kind of going through the guidelines and the trying to be safe is because we want to keep the doors open. And of course, you know that we're following CDC guidance. You can look at the right and see the site percentages. And so you see Charles Page High School is showing one case with 132 quarantines. And you have to remember that some of those quarantines aren't because they've been exposed at school. We actually have parents that are being honest, which is great, calling in and saying, hey, my child has been exposed at home, maybe my husband has it or my wife has it, and we're going to be quarantining our children for 14 days. I didn't really know if that would happen or not, and our parents are being, I feel like for the most part, pretty responsible in being honest. So that's all right. And
do
even
you have the number of people that are being exposed here
so
that are in quarantine?
it's not broken down like that, but so you kind of, yes, kind of. So if you take the number, so let's take Charles Page, because that's the one that Blair is actually right, the 132. So 132 of those active quarantine isolations are exposures.
No, I'm not wanting exposure. I'm wanting exposures from the school, not from home.
Yeah, I gotcha. I don't have it broken down here, no, I do not.
I'd like to know that.
Okay, I can sure get that for you.
Thank you.
The other part of that is though, one of the pieces of data that we're trying to collect is understanding, remember this is just the beginning of week 3, how many of those folks that are quarantined actually come down with the virus? That I don't know, I think it's early. Lindsay, Bill and I were discussing that today in terms of data collection and how many weeks. I know that was kind of the thought process with the Tulsa Fire Department and maybe changing some of the guidance for them. And I don't want to speak for Matt at all, but I've heard it now from 2 different people. And what they were finding was a low incident rate for those that were quarantined that were actually turning positive. And so again, right now we're strictly adhering to CDC for sure. But it's certainly something we want to look at. And we have 2 weeks of data. We're going to discuss again in 2 more weeks where we have a full month just to see. I want to see how that's going to work for us. We're wearing masks, and I talked to our teachers today, just kind of get a feel for how that's going with mask wearing, and it's going really well. The kids have been amazing at complying and doing the right thing. You can, I don't know if it's secondary, I don't see Becky Painter in here. I thought it might be a little bit of a challenge at the secondary level, and the kids are wonderful. Kids have been really great. So there's yet more to be determined, but I wanted, number one, the public to see the numbers so we can be very transparent and clear. And then secondly, let you all kind of have an explanation tonight of the explanation behind the numbers here. So any questions about that? I know.
Yeah, I'm very interested to find out, or I'd like to be briefed a little bit more on how we're determining how someone has been exposed for 15 minutes at
Right.
less than 6
Right.
weeks.
So it's easier at the elementary because you have cohorts of students.
Let's talk about the high school.
At the high
Let's
school,
talk about the athletics.
okay, at the high school, we have seating charts for every single classroom. And
Talk about athletics.
right. So strength and conditioning, that would be one of the classes that we would have had exposure for this year. So that would have sparked because the number of students in that class And Bo, I have to tell you, it's tough. Our people are trying really hard to pay attention to who sits where, but athletics is hard. I had a conversation with
I have a
Coach.
hard time believing that, because I've been to the practices before, but I have a hard time believing that there is anybody out there that is at a specific straight 15-minute exposure
Right,
for less than 6 feet. I have a hard time believing that's what's going on, and we're disrupting kids' education
Yeah.
because we think they were exposed.
right. One of the things, I understand. One of the things I will tell you, on August 26th, the CDC changed their descriptor of close contact. And one of the pieces was close physical contact, regardless of 15 minutes or closer than 6 feet. And it had, and then in parentheses, it had to do with hugging and kissing, right? Well, football, you don't hug and kiss, but you certainly tackle. And so that was one of the
But
things.
not everyone on the football field
Exactly.
tackles the same person. Not everybody in the wrestling room
I agree,
wrestles the same person.
absolutely,
We need to
absolutely,
figure that out before we start sending the whole teams home.
100%.
Because, well, we've already done it.
Right.
So we've already messed that up.
Well, trying to stay safe is trying to keep the doors open. So
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, we are looking into, Coach Cleek and I and Rob Sitton had a conversation about literally looking into the practice of maybe videotaping tackle drills. Because you could, in a video scenario, understand who was in close proximity with the tackle drill, so that if you think about, say, a quarterback, he probably doesn't get tackled in practice. And so we're refining that strategy. Any other questions? I mean, I understand the frustration. I've talked to a few parents about this idea of quarantining and how it's going. And we understand that we've got to get better at that. We really need to try to hone in on those that would be constituted as close contact. But I promise you, it is a little tricky, to say the least, if you're trying to follow the CDC guidelines as they're written. Any other questions?
If a kid is in quarantine, do they have the option to be in the virtual academy?
They can. Most of them choose to do distance learning. So what happens is, at least in the kids I believe that are in these numbers, are shifting to distance learning. So they're keeping the same teachers, same work assignments they would get at school, and they're continuing their work as if they were here. The reason.
They've done a good job of putting everything on.
Yeah.
Good class. I mean, everything, all the assignments are on there. So the teachers have done a wonderful job of doing that.
Absolutely. So I would agree with that. It's been a real mindset shift, there's no doubt, and keeping track of all of it has been probably a little cumbersome, but they are heroes. They've done an amazing job with that. So none of us want to quarantine anyone. I mean, my preference would be to have them all at school, but at the same time, when I know we developed guidelines to help keep our teachers healthy, I mean, our biggest concern going into the year was making sure we keep our teachers here. Berry Hill was an example of a high school that shut down the entire school for 2 weeks because they had an inordinate amount of cases at the high school. I don't want to be there. The only way we can keep school running is if our teachers are here and present to teach. And so far, we're I'm pretty proud of where we're at considering. So we're working on it. We're working on understanding the data so that we can make sure we do a good job with those quarantine practices.
Maybe we should ask a few more questions before we start sending kids home.
Right. Anybody else have a question? Okay, moving on, we are, I believe, at the consent. Yes, we are. So I want to bring a couple of things to your attention. Okay, item number 21 is an out-of-state travel request for the dance team nationals. It seems a little unique and maybe preliminary for board approval to go out of state to Florida. And so I recognize that. I also recognize there's a attachment where the Booster Club officers have written a plea to the board, and I have to tell you, I read it, reread it again to determine whether we should really present it to the board for approval. So I'm going to be totally transparent and honest here. One of the things we chose to do unlike some of our neighbors, is come to school. I don't have a predictor, which is what makes this so difficult for February. But what I do know is we can change our minds. If you look at the descriptor in that item, you see that really the only loss of which the Booster Club, the parents agreed to, was a $50 loss in their airfare tickets. So even if we were in a predicament where that might not be a great decision, if we decide to not let them choose to not let them go, then they were in agreement that they were willing to forego the $50 deposit for the airfare. The other thing I know is to plan a trip that large, it takes fundraising. And to do that kind of fundraising for that trip that historically has happened every year I can remember, so quite a while, they have to have the time to fundraise adequately for that. So in the consent agenda, this would be an item that we would just say, hey, by the way, the dance team's going to Florida this year, we need your approval. I wanted to bring it up because I felt like it might elicit some questions about approving now. I feel strongly that if at all possible, they should get that opportunity. I know that you guys thought through some of the things that our seniors from last year missed. Graduation was done very eloquently, but it was different than what we're used to doing with our seniors. Amongst baseball, our basketball team last year was in the state tournament and didn't get to play. And I don't want to be preliminary in predicting and negating an opportunity if there's an opportunity for them to go. And so I would ask the board to approve that agenda item tonight and at least give them a chance to go ahead and do that activity. And again, with them knowing full well that the loss would be a $50 airline deposit for each participant.
We cannot put the time frame that says it's in February, so if we say sometime in January, we make the call that we're still in favor or not.
I think so. I think we can add that to our January agenda for sure. I think it's too early. You know this as well as I do. You're living this whole COVID phenomenon right now with your job, and I think we all are in our lives, and it's impacted the way you do things for sure, and no one likes it. Which is why I think that a decision in January is probably appropriate, for sure, to come back and revisit. But because this whole situation has been fluid from the get-go, one of the discussion items I had with the teachers at before this meeting with our SSCA reps was the whole idea of kids coming back to school. And initially, when we talked about kids switching back from virtual academy to in-person learning, we said we're going to give them a semester. It's really hard for teachers to shift from virtual back to in-class. And we totally shifted directions. When people wanted to come back, we said, we're going to take it back. Because if it wasn't working for them, we wanted them to be able to learn. And my words were, and this sounds wishy-washy, but it's not, I said, I reserve the right to change my mind. Because in the context of everything that's gone on, if you can't change your mind based on current happenings, data and things, then we're not doing right by kids. And so we shifted. So I think in that element, we can also shift for sure. I mean, if it's unsafe, we're not going to let them go. But if it's safe, I certainly don't want to destroy a trip that girls have been looking forward to for a long time. Probably most of their high school, at least their high school career, probably junior high. You're going to probably see a request for the baseball team. You know this, every year we get a request for the baseball team to do their spring break trip. I haven't seen that come across my desk yet, but after I kind of ferreted through that, I don't know, the information and really listened, I feel like that's the right decision to make now. So thank you for suggesting a revisit in January. I think that's totally appropriate, considering what could be the conditions then.
Well, I mean, I must throw this out there because this is how I feel about most of the stuff going on here. I don't think it's our position as a board or as a school system to determine if a kid can go to a dance competition or not. that should lie solely on the parents. If the parents feel like a kid is safely can go through this competition, then we should support them 100%. We should not sit here and say that a kid could or could not go, even if the parents feel like they're safe enough to go.
I understand. Unfortunately, we make the decisions for students all the time. And because dance is a school activity, it falls under the authority of the school district to make decisions. I'm not saying we reverse that, Mr. Nolan. I'm just saying, based on the conditions, I wish I had a crystal ball that could project the future, and I knew for sure, but it's just been not predictable at this point.
Well, nothing's been predictable, but we can still send our football team to another city to play against another
I
team.
understand,
And we're gonna do that, continue to do that, and continue to do that.
I understand.
So
So you look at the CDC guidelines and there's been travel restrictions the whole time, with hot spots. Like I say, and again, Mr. Mullins asked the question of, is it possible to revisit that? Of course, it's possible. Would we need to? Maybe not, probably not. I don't know the answer to that question, but it certainly falls under what we have to decide as a school system, activities that pertain and the ones that we govern.
I guess we're also making decisions based on the appropriate data at the specific time. There could be something that could happen that could cancel the football game Friday night.
Sure.
I mean, look, colleges are doing that. I think the University of Tulsa and OSU schedule theirs about a week
Right.
because of the situation going on. So I think we got to be fluid and flexible in those kind of decisions, but keep the data in front of us.
Right.
And make sure that we're making choices based on that.
Right. I think flexibility in school is what we always live by anyway. It's flexibility on steroids, quite frankly.
as long as we're looking at the correct data.
Agree, but then the other part of the trickiness with data in this day and age is the amount of it that gets thrown at you. One of the questions that came up in the teachers' meeting earlier today was, what is a probable case? Because then there was some, rumor that the state of Oklahoma and the health department was going to start calculating probable cases. And so that's a whole nother piece that hasn't been factored in all along. And I have no idea. There was talk about the Oklahoma State Health Department map being changed. And so that's been tricky. There is no doubt that's been tricky. So any other comments or questions? Okay, now item number 23 is the approval of the teacher compensation schedule. We add that to the agenda each year. It has not changed since last year. I just want to bring that to your attention. Item number 24 is a contract that you haven't seen in the past. That's Edmentum. It's for Calvert licensing, which is the curriculum we're using with our elementary school students. You'll see a long set of items, 25 through 30. 47. I need one of those like sponges. Through 37 with committees that have to be board approved every single year. So this is no different, maybe different names, but same committees. And that really is the consent agenda in a nutshell.
Make a motion, we approve the second agenda, consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, second, any more questions? Can I have a vote, please? Mullin,
Aye.
Knopfler,
Aye.
Wagner,
Aye.
aye. Okay. Action items, number 38, proposed executive session to discuss employment.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we go to executive session to discuss the employment.
Any more questions? And a motion and a second, a vote. Or do we?
Mullin,
Aye.
Knopfler, Wagner, aye.
Aye.
You're like, you know what? That sounds good.
I gotta tell Claudia, thank you.
No, that was. We did no action. Okay, I'll bring this back into session. We had a discussion, no vote was taken. And we are on to item 39, proposed employment.
I'll make a motion to approve item 39 as stated.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion or any discussion? A vote, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, item number 40, proposed approval of new and revised policies.
So these, I'm gonna let Ms. Arnold discuss the policy sheets that we wrote. What you're gonna see is some revisions and then some that were needing to be rescinded. So Kristen, if you don't mind.
This is exciting stuff. So I know you guys are happy to be here for this today. So just revise that DABB has to do with records investigation. That language comes strictly from OSSBA. So we just updated that portion. And then on the revised DABB-E1, what cracks me up, if you notice, felonies marked out and then criminals marked out in another place, but we went with what language they told us. So that's what you'll see on the next one. And then the FMAAA, that is new this year for emergency medical services. We do something like that each year anyway, but our partnership would be with the Sand Springs Fire Department, also with IMSA. That information is shared with them actually through JJ, and each year we gather that information together and share it with those two departments. This year just bumps it up where it's not just for our athletics department, but each site. And so I've talked to principals a little bit about that, and we'll implement that and get additional information out. So that's FMAAA. And then a little further down, you'll see actually the overall plan, and deeper in the plan, it also includes the athletics part, which Sitton's had out there forever. And then things that we need to do away with because they're old and I think should have probably been out a while back, but we're rescinding the policy DABBE2 and DABBE4. Any questions?
Can I just ask a question on the DABB records investigation? It says that if a teacher was employed prior to a certain date and they don't have this background check, that the next time they renew their teacher certificate, they have to do the background check. Is this the way I understand it? And there is a cost associated with that. Is that something that the district will bear that cost?
That is a great question, Mr. Mullins, and this is what I know as of this point. So I started this journey about 2 years ago, and JD Nolan actually is one of the ones that she got some information from Ms. Durkee and I to update this, and we were excited about that. When they renew their certificate, they'll have to renew and update their background checks. But with that said, we don't know what that database is going to look like and how they're going to know that. So they haven't asked districts for that information for who we have one on and who we don't. And so we don't know what that's going to look like moving forward. Haven't been advised. I've sent some emails to the people that are in charge of that at the State Department. I think they're still kind of scrambling based off of COVID and some other stuff. So looking for advisement. But yes, you are correct. When you renew your certificate, which I think is $57. How much does it cost? About $57 to renew that. You will also have to get a background check. And that is going to include our support personnel too for level 2 through special ed. So there's some new laws that are coming down the pike. We're looking for some more information before we truly, push that out to staff so we have clarification so we can help them through that process. Whether the district's gonna pay for that, we pay for a background check for everyone that comes, so we personally own it. And that way, if something happens later, it comes to us and we know what that is. That is something we talked about and we're still talking through because it really would be an astronomical cost for the district. And each year will look different. So depending on how many certificates were
How
renewed.
often does a teacher have to get their certificate renewed?
Every 5 years.
5 years?
Right.
Good, thank you.
It was an interesting conversation, though, I have to tell you, with background checks, and I think it's a good idea, obviously, for people to have a background check, but the truth is, it was quirky about who pays for it. And what we learned, and this may change, I don't know if it'll change or not, but if we required that for their employment to onboard, we could pay for it. But if it wasn't a requirement for their employment to onboard them, then the person was responsible for paying for the background check. So I don't know how that'll all pan out, honestly. It's been a little bit difficult to get information from the State Department of Ed. This whole COVID situation has really put a damper on the way information is, how quickly information is accessed. And so I think there's a lot to be determined with any new law. I think to find some details, the devil's always in the details, right? And so I think that there's gonna be some details that are gonna have to be ironed out. One of them is, who's the responsible party to pay.
Mr. Mullins, I also want to tell you that anybody new that comes to our district, I have them and our district pays for background checks. So anybody new to our district, I really don't even take it from an old district because if something happens and it belongs to that other district if they paid for it. And so therefore, if something happens in their, background check or whatever, it would go to that district. And legally, they really can't give that to us. So then there could be something hanging out there that our district wouldn't know about because they couldn't send that to us because they had paid for it and didn't have permission to send that after the fact. And so you read in here, you can take one from another district. Our district pays for one background check for every new person that comes in. Like Dylan had one a year ago, and when he came and joined us, I said, sorry, Dylan, you gotta go get one. So
We don't require the applicants to pay the $50.
it's $57.25, and we pay for that first background check for all employees.
So I think, Ms. Arnold, you covered 40 and 41.
Yes.
Make a motion to approve item 40.
Second.
Any discussion? Are we doing 40 and 41? Or just 40? Okay. Vote please.
Lauren?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve item 41.
Second.
The vote in a second. Vote please.
Aye.
Aye.
Item number 42 was developed in conjunction with Mr. Sitton, our athletic director, and Ms. Arnold. Kristen, I'll let you take that as well. This is also generated by a change in the requirement law, I believe.
That was the one that I discussed, the FMAAA and AAA. And that is the one that I was telling you about that is new this year and in conjunction has to have an emergency action plan. So that emergency action plan, the first part of it will deal with all of our sites and be dispersed, and also information will be dispersed to IMSA and also the Sand Springs Fire Department. If you go deeper into the plan, you'll see more information in there, which we utilize every year that deals with sports. And so it's just kind of attaches the two together. So our partners in doing this don't have to search through two documents. So
A lot of those were born out of concussion law and changes in requirements for participation in athletics and caution, so they learned it inside the same document.
Right, and that includes all activities, so if they're having a wrestling, not just a wrestling tournament, but if they're having a choir thing, then a choir performance concert that's happening at Clyde Boyd Middle School, then they understand where those activities are and what's going on, and that's why it's so important for us to keep our calendars updated and those types of things, because these are the response people that would come.
This is not a policy, this is just a plan that the district has similar to our back to school.
Exactly.
Right, this is just the plan part that goes with that FMAAA.
Yes, sir, I'm motion we approve the,
I'm sorry, I got it, but
okay,
on page 3 of that deal,
Yes,
it says it's about the lighting.
yes.
It says in the second paragraph, the athletic trainer on site for competition and or practice will assume responsibility and make the final decision if the practice or competition will cease and when it will resume. Okay, that statement there says that the athletic trainer is the person to do it. All right, but then in the next one down, it says the head coach will designate a chain of command and as to who monitors threatening weather and who makes the decision. The decision's already been made. It's the athletic trainer, according to this document. And then it says the next one below that, the athletic trainer or designee will be aware of National Weather Service issued thunderstorms. So to make this really right, it really should say the athletic trainer or designee on site for competition and practice.
You're right, so let's make that change in approval. So basically asking to approve that in the bottom of page 3, where it refers to the athletic trainer or designee, I think that's a very good change. Ms. Arnold?
Yes.
Sorry for that.
No, thank you.
No, I'm glad you caught it. Honestly, I mean, we've had that athletic part, so that it needs to be updated and make it correct, so.
the chair make a motion we approve the amended Sand Springs Public Schools Emergency Action Plan for the 2021 period.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Vote, please.
Mullin?
Aye.
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 Aye. Item 43.
Okay, so we're gonna transition to Mr. Morris, who has spent a few hours on the first budget revision for the 2021 school year.
All right.
I told him to keep it positive. I have no comments here, but.
Positive? Yeah, that's me. I'm always so positive. All right, so let's talk about the budget for this year. Before I start, I'm gonna say, there's no curse about living in interesting times. Well, I'm doing accounting in interesting times. I'm telling you, it's an interesting thing. It's been pointed out to me by a couple of you that the notes don't match exactly to the budget. There's a reason why. My estimate of needs, which I expect to get from my auditor, plus the same as Hewitt, somewhere around August 20th, didn't come in until September the 3rd at about 2:33 p.m. So I got about 30 minutes to look at it instead of the 2 weeks I normally get. And then dump the numbers in here and play with them and see what's going on. So it was, trust me, it's been that way for everything that I do because those dominoes have to affect. And for Jeff Hewitt, who's my auditor, he was waiting on those in Tulsa County. They had to produce their numbers because their people were out of the COVID. And so these dominoes just keep on. So we're lucky to have it. So I'm going to go through my notes and kind of correct so that you can see where we were headed and what I was headed to based on the budget that I was able to put out after I took the estimate needs and put the new numbers into it and drove them through my revenues and expenses, okay? Let's start on page 4, general fund revenue page, okay? If you look down through there, and I'm gonna go to the bottom, 35.9 total revenues. That actually went down just slightly from where I was originally planning to put it. Because if you notice in my notes, I had 36.1. So that tells you right now that I had some changes and had to pull revenue back some, okay? My goal whenever I built this budget for you guys was my revenues to be as close as I could get them at that point in time. Of course, that was 6 days ago, and everything's changed since then. Who knows what's gonna happen? I mean, I honestly do not know. So, and as Ms. Durkee alluded to earlier, Vernon Florence is telling you, he doesn't know, and he's probably one of the top experts in the state. My guess is that there's a possible revenue failure waiting for us. But I wouldn't stand up on the podium and say that, I just don't know. Who knows? So, I put the revenues in based upon our estimate needs and based upon the other category based upon what I thought, and that's how I came out with 35.9. To get back to the numbers that you all wanted to know about, the largest loss, item number 2 is largest loss of state aid was 1.8 million. Okay, that is what we actually lost in state aid from last year to this year. That's huge. I can't even overstate that. That's a major loss in the category. Now, the good news was, a week ago, they revised that number upwards, and I told Ms. Durkee not to spend it all in one place, it went up $73.
I was actually very excited about that. And I didn't know the number. I said, Greg, I think there's a movie, and he said, yeah, don't spend all of this $78.
Yeah, she said, oh, they revised the numbers, what was it? And I said, I didn't bother telling her. I said, well, the $73, don't go spend it all in one place. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what we're dealing with there. But that number is correct on the state aid. That's the line 3210. But we went from 18 almost 0.9 million last year to what we're going to collect, which is just shy of 17.1 million. That's a huge gift in revenues. Okay. As you fall down through there, you're going to notice some numbers that are up. Down in the federal sources of revenue, which is the fourth section of numbers, it's under 4210. It's extremely higher than prior years. That's because COVID numbers are in there. That is the actual federal dollars that COVID has given us. Okay, and that's where they will be coded.
Well,
okay?
in addition to the Title I.
In addition to, that's the reason why you see it about 800,000 more than what we would have collected the year before. Okay, so I don't want anybody to get really excited thinking, we got a whole bunch of extra money. We did, but it's COVID related. And it's so basically it's a one-time shot. That's not going to be repeated next year. So just be aware of that.
COVID-20 is not going to give us more.
I'm man.
Well, there's talking about another federal stimulus. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
But I will say this, back when we had the air money back in 2009, I believe.
Yeah.
It was not tagged to a certain thing. And so what's been different about the stimulus package this time is there were certain expenditures that we had to spend it on. So it's not quite as versatile as it was before. So budgeting's been a little bit tricky. So we've used ours a lot on PPE. We used a chunk of it on technology for Chromebooks, a chunk of it for curriculum. And we'll be paying some salaries that make sense, like nurses. We actually have a health aide that's a part of that as well. So we had to be a little bit more cognitive and thoughtful about what that money was for.
Yes, because in my mind, it's a one time. And I, as an accountant, I would never look at it as a possible ongoing situation because that goes against all the rules that I've taught. If they've given it to us one time, I'm never going to see it again. Now, if I see it next year, yeah, it would be great, fantastic, but I won't depend on it. Okay. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is line 6,000, which is our fund balance. You'll notice that it went up again. We went up about 458,000. It was a small adjustment compared to the number you would have seen before, because we had some dollars moving around with it, but nothing major. I think it was like $700. But if you'll notice, we've gone up 458,000 more. So we have actually increased our fund balance by $458,000 in preparation for this year and for next year. We are really, Ms. Durkee is very aware of that. She hears me cry about it all the time. Bless her heart, she has to put up with me. I am the person that walks in and goes, you do know we're going to lose money next year. I mean, that's my first statement for her every day. And she's like, go away. But she's planning for it. I think we've done a really good job in the district to set you up so that the next 2 years, which I think are going to be ugly, you can weather it and not be in any way hurt whatsoever. So that's kind of the plan. So let's go on to the next page, which is Fund 11, the expenditure side. Okay, and we had a few changes in there because of what came through on the estimate of needs and some of the numbers that I received that last minute and everything else. Okay. in my notes, I said we budgeted for 37.2 million. That didn't change. I didn't let the bottom line change. So what I did was I trued up some of the numbers in the categories and then moved some other numbers around in other categories so I can keep my bottom line about where I wanted it. This is about an increase of about 1.9%, I would say. The categories break down like this, okay? Because I was asked about this because they weren't matching. The instructional piece is going up about 449,000 compared to the prior year. And admin's going up about 154,000, and support's going up about 91,000. That's 694,000 increased costs. Okay, so that'll get you to your number that you're looking for, Ms. Wagner. Now, I appreciate her banking knowledge and everything, because when I talk to her, it's kind of fun to get debits and credits to people that talk. Yeah, you do. You got that debit and credit balance. You understand that stuff. Always fun to talk to people like that. So that's where your $694,000 increase is coming from. Is those three categories primarily? So that gets you your number that you're looking for. Okay. The number that's going to just, this is the lead balloon. Okay. I gave revenues where I thought they were going to land, the best I could, based upon what the information we have out there. I set our expenses up to the top of what we could spend. And so we're $1.3 million into the fund balance. Now, that means I want to be able to appropriate to that portion. That doesn't mean I'm going to encumber and spend to that portion. But if the revenues turn around, and stranger things have happened, y'all watched this last couple of years, stranger things happen. If the revenues do turn around, let's say there's a federal stimulus, let's say something happens, then we have the ability to appropriate to that balance and continue doing business the way we would like to do. Maybe not the way we have to do it. And those are two extremely different statements, as you well know. One of the things that's in that number is the bonus that you in December. Okay, that's $1 million. 800,000 to $1 million, depending on generally where they fall and various expenses. So that kind of gives you an idea of what I was looking at. Okay. Any questions so far? All right, those are the two big categories. Let's go to the next page. Let's go to page 6. That's the co-op fund. It's just a general fund that's out there. We're in co-op with somebody help me, please.
Anderson, I'm talking about.
Anderson, Crew. And I think there's one other.
Keystone.
Keystone, thank you. Yeah, we're in co-op with all three of those. They send their money to us. And it's automatically comes to us now. They don't even have, I don't even have to bill them. It just comes directly to us, which makes it a lot easier. And then we have our co-op set up so that we can manage whatever situations they have coming to us. I don't know if anything new is coming at us this year in our co-op. An individual that's going to have to be managing that this year, I haven't heard.
It's the kids that funnel into Page Academy that will do co-op. So basically what that means is that they're sharing services with another district. So those schools have the opportunity, if they have students that they would like to participate in Page Academy, they can. It just depends on the given year whether they have students that want to send.
But anyways, so as you can see, what happens is I've laid in what I feel like is going to be our dollars in, which the 4281, the federal sources, I do know that's the exact penny because I have received that. The top figures are amounts that I'm calculating based upon what's happened in the prior years and stuff. And then our fund balance, as you can see, I've grown it a little bit in the co-op fund. I'm gonna shoot to spend it down some this year. That's the reason why I had 202,000 coming out on the bottom. Because I want to spend that fund balance down a little this year and help alleviate so we can maybe move the salary over and get it out of our fund 11 and put it over in fund 12 and charge it off into their category more than likely. That'll be up to the superintendent on how she wants to manage those funds.
That's the item we approved while ago, 22, the cooperative agreement between Santa Cruz and Berryville, doing the same thing for all 4 days.
That was a new request this year, Mr. Mullins. Their flow through was about the equivalent of 2 students state aid. So when we agreed basically to co-op with Berryhill, I forgot about that, we did. Then our agreement was 2 students max.
All right, on to the building fund. The building fund has been a fund that we have encumbered a lot of money against, and we keep it encumbered, such as utilities, things of that nature, but we don't necessarily use it. We try to pay most of that out of Fund 11. But there have been some expenses hit it. You can see that from the fact that we went from 3.2 to 3.8 in 18, 19, 19, 20. This year, we only went from 3.8 to 3.9 to just 4, as far as our rolling our balance for it. So we have had some expenses that came out of the building fund once we started this big building. And some of the expenses up front came out of the building fund for this, specifically architectural fees. And everything, we had some architectural people for the bond cast.
Well, and then, of course, added expenditures, the drama edition, which you haven't seen in completion yet, will end up being more than what was first planned for and prepping the bond. We got a little bit more elaborate than maybe what we planned for, but we do have building fund money to do that, and I have to tell you, it's gonna be really nice when that's completed. And then the other part that we made you aware of is the clad for the east wing. You probably have noticed how different that looks from the new building. We thought it was important to make sure that as seamless as the inside interior is from new to old, we also wanted the outside to be as seamless. So just that curb appeal and making it look respectable. Honestly, when we started looking into, say, the concrete meets there's a metal strip at the bottom that the plaster sits on. It was so, it's just really in not great shape that needed some repair. So the project was a little over where we first thought it would be, but again, that's the reason we had the building fund to help us compensate, to make sure that we can do the things that we want to do.
And as you can see, we have almost a $4 million fund balance in the building fund, which is wonderful. It's always nice to have that in case we do have problems, i.e. the roof. We're not gonna pay $2 million, but we're gonna need 50,000. We have 50,000. It's not even a work. So it's nice. And that's the reason why we try to keep it at a decent level. So, and I've laid out expenses for possible expenses to be paid out of it, including the new Angus gym. That's where a lot of the money's coming from there. So just so you know. All right, child nutrition, Fund 22, which is page 8. Really not much in the way of changes there. Child nutrition is an animal that has been from this year, has been a hard road to hoe. Because with COVID happening, and then her numbers dropping through the food floor, came back this year, and we've got all these kids that have gone out on virtual services, and these are things that, just like me, how do you anticipate? You're more reactionary than you are anticipating at this point. She has had a coup, I think, with the federal program that has now basically said that all lunches are free, and we're hoping to see our numbers climb because of that.
So every child,
So,
because the federal government approved an extension of the waivers that we were able to use this summer, we can feed every child in Sand Springs for free, which is really great. Meaning we get reimbursements for every child that takes a school lunch, which hopefully will help us compensate for some of our virtual students that may or may not be picking up a lunch at this point because they're at home. That program will allow us to feed any child that's 18 or under. When we first promoted this week, she was really truly worried about her stock of food. Like she wanted to make sure she had enough. So as we kind of progress further into the semester, we'll be making it open for other children that would want to pick up lunch, much like they did in the summer feeding program.
but you'll see that I held her basically flat both on the expenses and the revenue side, because when I built this was before that data came out, and this was more a hope than an actual happening. Now I think it could possibly, she could possibly collect these revenues. I think there's a very, very good chance she might. It's just going to depend on the turnout. There's nothing the superintendent on this person can do about that. It's have to come, and that's just the way it works. The bond funds are what the bond funds are. We collect so much money off our bond funds each year. This last year, we collected 1.5 million. Before we collected the money to pay for the $610,000 for this building this year, and the 2.325 million for Northwoods. Next year, I believe we'll collect, I don't know the exact number off my head, it's 2.325 for Northwoods. It's the same every year. It goes up again it goes up some for this building, not a bunch, but we'll have about 2 million come in approximately May next year in bond fund money
It
again.
won't be this building, you remember there was a revenue lease that paid for this one, it was to the tune of 12.1, I believe. And then, if you'll remember, we set up, the second part of the bond to collect over the course of 9 years, and so we're still in the continuation of collecting those funds. So through, I believe, 2027, we access 2 million each year, truly for the purpose of upkeeping buildings and then, of course, technology and curriculum.
So, and then, of course, I've laid out the expenses for the bonds, saying that we can spend it all on what we have appropriated. We never spend all of it every year. Obviously, we carry a balance over and over on all of our bonds, usually for, on average, about 4 years before we actually extend the bond out. That's been about our pace. We have 5 years to spend them, and usually about the 4th year, I try to make sure everything's spent by about the 4th year. That way we don't get into that last year and have problems. So that's been generally the pace of our geo bonds, okay? Next page is sinking fund. It is what it is. That's just based on estimate needs money, what's gonna come in, what's anticipated to come in, and the exact amount of our bond payments going out that we have to make, each year, once a year, or twice a year. We make an interest payment every 6 months, and once a year, we make the principal payment. So that is basically based on that estimate needs. And the last page is the gifts and fund. As you can see, it's rather healthy. People have been very generous to the school district. They donated a lot of money for various activities, to help with technology under the COVID situation. Webco, I think, is one of those that has been very generous to the school district, and that's reflected in, you can see in the fund balance, having grown in Fund 81. And of course, I set out to spend most of it, that way we can appropriate against it, move on, but it's a bit, just making it available.
This, I would remind you, this is the fund that we use for the startup for daycare.
Yep.
And I haven't mentioned that in a while, but it's amazing. We have 7 students on daycare, and again, this fund helped us with the startup cost for that. And
Yeah, Fund 11 is not carrying the cost for that right now. They're gonna reimburse Fund 11 out of that once they get, up to the point where they can, so it should be a good thing. Fund 83, I will beat that one to death. That's the same thing I talked about many times. The bank and insurance company hasn't requested the money, and I'm just holding it in abeyance and letting it collect interest. Until they decide they want to do something with it. Any questions? Hopefully I answered everything. No problem.
I will say, carrying a fund balance like we have in terms of being just very sensitive to fiscal responsibility of the district's money, this is the reason. We're not in a place where we worry. Don't get me wrong, we still be very conscientious of expenditures for sure, but we're in a place where we, not like some districts where we have to worry about making it through the next couple of years if we have some dry years, which we expect.
I can honestly tell you, having gone to some meetings, and trainings, where there's been some districts there, and I said what my fund balance was, and I had some people give me dirty looks because they don't have that, and they are worried.
Well,
So there's gonna be some, if things hold true, there's gonna be some districts, writing some warrants that aren't gonna be free, unpayable warrants. I have that feeling, it can get that bad. So, and we don't have that problem, thanks to the last 4 years, 5 years of what we've built up. So, hopefully you can go to bed at night knowing that the district is being well managed.
I will say, at the end of the year, please expect to build in the fund balance. It's probably gonna happen, it's just a condition of where we're at revenue-wise, but again, without worrying.
Everybody's asleep now.
I make a motion, we approve the proposed first revised budget for the 2021 school year.
Second. Any more questions? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Can I have a vote, please?
Muller,
Aye.
Malcolm,
Aye.
Blackman,
Aye.
Waiters.
Aye. Item number 44.
This is the needs. I The only thing on the estimate needs that really should interest you, because the numbers on the estimate needs are basically the GEO bonds and the sinking fund and all of that stuff that I've already pulled off and put onto the budget, so you see them. But the fund numbers, yes, there are actually fund numbers, is the net assessed value for our district. When we put in, when we went in and talked to
Tom Frazier about the bond.
Tom Fraser, but also when I had to sit in front of the bond rating agency with Ms. Durkee, and we sat there and we had to sell our bonds to them to try to raise our rating and everything. One of the things I told them was we were being hyper conservative with our growth rate and on our bonds. We had set it at 1%. That way we would guarantee, or we felt we were guaranteed that no matter what, we wouldn't set our growth rate on our bonds too high and find ourselves in a problem with our sinking funds. Okay?
Which means we're collecting the taxes adequately to pay off the bond debt, which is a good thing.
Yeah. So we set it at 1%. Well, this year, the net assessed value came out. Last year, we were 176.434 million for the district. This year, we're at 184.142 million for the district, which is an increase of 4.3%.
Tell me where you're seeing
Okay, I'll have to go back and dig through it. It's, I'll find it for you. I can't remember which page it's on. Okay. The 184 is on page 21. It's down on the bottom right of page 21. And it shows the combination of Tulsa County and Osage County, which is 174.6 and 9.5. And that's how they come up with 184.142. Okay? So our net assessed value is growing over 4 times what we anticipated when we set out to go get our lease revenue bond and have to set the GEO bonds, and because of course the GEO bonds pay the lease revenue bond, which basically. So when we went up to set that, we set it at 1%. Well, we grew it to 4.3%, which is really excellent. Really excellent for this area. And I'm not trying to be sarcastic or anything. I know there's some growths out there that are just crazy, but you guys don't. I've never seen a crazy growth around here, but 4.3% is a really good growth rate.
We're very pleased because what that enables us to do in 3 to 4 years when we can talk about bond projects that we might want to complete, then the positive growth rate will help us be able to access money to do things that we can do.
Thank you for the Chamber of Commerce for that. They have something to do with it, I'm sure.
Maybe. Maybe they did.
Well, it's set up military, moving from 31.837 to 30.31.
Right.
So it dropped our millage rate slightly and everything. So that tells you how much the growth was.
So of course, one of the things we want to do as a district is make sure we maintain millage, so that we can do the things that we do. There's definitely some things in security with our energy management system that we need to upgrade in the next maybe 3 to 4 years. And so hopefully that will give us the ability to do those things.
I think it was last year's, and we just don't show last year, just to show this year.
Right, correct, Mike. You have to go to the last estimate.
You just remember what last year was.
No, I opened up last year. Yeah, I come up with the exact number and do my calculations. But I was curious. I mean, that's one of the first things you do is, hey, how did we grow that much? I knew we'd grown because I remember last year I remember the 7 handle, as my wife liked to say. I remember a 7 handle. So I knew it was 170 some, and I saw 80. I was like, okay, we've grown a lot compared. We've had good growth. So that's excellent. So, and that's the most important number off the year, and all the rest of the numbers if you go through it and look at it, are basically numbers that I fill off and put on the budget, so you've already seen them. So this is repeating of everything.
I guess what my question, what I just confused was the very first page, and it says it's like zone zeros on there. And that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no, it's fine. Honestly, the estimate of needs for us isn't something that really means all that much because we're on the budget. The only thing the estimate needs for us is looking at NAV and looking at the millage rate and making sure that we are setting our, when I do this first about budget, making sure that I set my sinking fund and my various taxation funds to match what jet fuel is coming up with from the counties. And that way we match. And that's the whole goal of that. That's the exercise I have to do with the estimate needs. Estimate needs be a lot more different than on the budget, honestly. They have to drive their whole budget off of it. And where we devise our own budget. So. Any questions?
Madam Chairman, make a motion, we approve the estimate of needs presented for the 2021 school year.
Second.
Motion and a second, a vote please.
Mullins.
Aye.
Marvel.
Aye.
Wagner. Aye. Waker.
Aye. Okay, new business, do we have any announcements?
We do not. I will say this, and I should have said this at the beginning. Mr. Coach Campbell's funeral was today. It's always sad, and definitely lose a colleague. When he was, I failed to even mention him. He was one that came out of retirement this year to coach at Clyde Middle School and be a social studies teacher. He was so excited, and so to get that call. His service was today at 1 in Hill Spring, and it was amazing. Very well attended, of course, and lots of people from his past that actually stuck and stuff. So just that family, remember them, because it was a tough, unexpected loss. So.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second. I have a motion and a second, a vote please.
Mullins.
Aye.
Wagner. Aye. Waker.
Aye. Thank you all.
Right.
You don't get to.